The 22nd of June, 1941. Under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union, its ally in the war against Poland. Among the first territories to be occupied by Germany is Belarus, officially called Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. Within just a week of the invasion, the Germans capture the capital, Minsk, and immediately implement their genocidal policies. Among the first to be targeted are the Jews, who are confined to ghettos where they face extreme overcrowding, severe food shortages, and starvation. By the end of the war, more than 2 million Belarusians, Jews, and Slavs will be killed, accounting for approximately 25% of the total population, the highest proportion of any country involved in the war. However, this atrocity will not remain unpunished, and the main perpetrators will pay for this crime with their lives. Minsk was bombed and taken over by the Germans on the 28th of June, 1941. On the 3rd of July, 2,000 Jewish members of the intelligentsia were marched to a forest and massacred. 5 days later, Reinhard Heydrich, the head of the Reich Security Main Office, gave the order for all male Jews in the occupied territory between the ages of 15 and 45 to be shot on sight as Soviet partisans. By August, the victims targeted in the shootings included women, children, and the elderly. The Germans began exterminating the Jews en masse, without any resistance on the part of the local population. The mass murder of Belarusian Jews took place in large pits located close to the ghettos, and was carried out by the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi mobile death squads, 2 mobile police battalions, and units of Lithuanian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian policemen. In certain cases, the Germans utilized gas vans to kill the Jews. In late July 1941, the Germans established the Minsk Ghetto. It was located in the northwestern part of Minsk, and about 80,000 people, including Jews from nearby towns, were crowded there. Between November 1941 and October 1942, the German government deported nearly 24,000 Jews from Germany, Austria, and the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia to Minsk. The SS and police authorities shot or gassed in special vans, most of them upon arrival in Maly Trostinets, a small village about 8 miles to the east. The German occupation authorities housed the others in a separate section of the ghetto in Minsk, segregated from local Belarusian Jews. Little contact was permitted between residents of the 2 ghettos. On the 2nd of March 1942, during a raid conducted by German and Belarusian police, a group of children from the ghetto's nursery or orphanage were seized and thrown into deep pits of sand to die. At that moment, several SS officers, including Wilhelm Kuber, arrived at the scene. Kuber was Generalkommissar, meaning Commissioner General, for the General District of White Ruthenia, today's Belarus. Spotless in his uniform, Kuber tossed handfuls of sweets to the terrified, screaming children, and then walked away. None of the children survived, as they were buried alive in the sand. The Germans destroyed the Minsk Ghetto in the fall of 1943. However, even the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces, were involved in the atrocities committed against the civilian population in Belarus. In March 1944, Generalmajor Johann Richert played a significant role in the forced relocation of Soviet civilians to the Ozarichi concentration camp, located near the city of Babruysk, around 140 kilometers southeast of Minsk. The camp was established under the orders of Josef Harper, the supreme commander of the 9th German Army. There were no buildings or sanitary facilities, just a massive closed-off area surrounded by barbed wire. Soldiers of the 35th Infantry Division, led by Richert, and reinforced by additional troops from Sonderkommando 7B of Einsatzgruppe B, forced at least 40,000 civilians into the camp. On the way, the guards had already shot at least 500 people who were too weak to continue walking. Women who could no longer carry their children left them at the roadside. The Ninth Army advised that for similar operations in the future, the marching column should be followed by burial commandos who would dispose of the dead bodies. Within the Ozarichi camp, the guards, without warning, shot any person who approached the fencing in search of water. The prisoners were mostly family members of slave laborers, children younger than 13, the sick, mothers with infants, and the elderly. Many of them had contracted typhus and were left to survive in the open marshlands without shelter, medical aid, food, or clean water. Within just 1 week, at least 9,000 more had died. To avoid the Red Army discovering the operation before the retreat had taken place, the civilians were forbidden to make fires despite the severe cold. Larisa Stashkevich, who survived the camp, recalled after the war, "There was a gate with barbed wire, small watchtowers with soldiers and German shepherds, but nothing else." She explained that anyone who tried to light a campfire was immediately shot. To find warmth, she hid behind the corpses of murdered prisoners. The German High Command celebrated the thousands of deaths as a success, referring to the victims as useless mouths. Another high-ranking army official involved in the atrocities committed in Belarus was Generalmajor Gottfried von Edmandsdorf. In early 1944, Edmandsdorf was tasked with creating a fortified zone around Belarusian Mogilev, a city located 200 kilometers east of Minsk. This mission was part of Germany's desperate attempt to hold its ground against the Red Army's relentless push westward. On Hitler's orders, Edmandsdorf received a written command from Army Group Center Commander Field Marshal Ernst Busch, instructing him to construct the Mogilev fortress. This order also explicitly mandated the destruction of a significant part of the city. The fortification effort involved mobilizing the entire able-bodied population of Mogilev and its outskirts, forcing them into hard labor in exchange for meager food rations. Those deemed incapable of work, including the sick, elderly, and children, were forcibly evacuated to the right bank of the Dnieper River, the area expected to be taken by the advancing Soviet forces. However, they were left without food or essential supplies and were positioned dangerously close to the fortified zone, serving as human shields. As a result, they faced near certain death, caught in the crossfire of Soviet artillery during the Red Army's advance and German artillery during the Wehrmacht's retreat. On the 28th of June 1944, the Red Army defeated Fortress Mogilev, and the same day, Edmandsdorf was captured by Soviet troops. After the war, 18 German military personnel, police, and SS officials were captured and held accountable for their roles in the atrocities committed in Belarus, and were tried in the Minsk War Crimes Trial, which was conducted by a Soviet military tribunal in Minsk, the capital of Soviet Belarus. The defendants included 11 members of the Wehrmacht, including the aforementioned Johann Richert and Gottfried von Edmandsdorf, 4 members of the Order Police, and 3 members of the Waffen-SS, which was the military branch of the SS and SD, which was the intelligence agency of the SS and the Nazi Party. During the trial, which began in December 1945, some former Nazi officials such as Generalmajor Johann Richert, who was the main defendant in the trial, repeatedly claimed that they had been merely following orders from their superiors and then pleaded for leniency. Despite this, on the 29th of January 1946, he, along with 13 other men, were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. When the judge read the death sentences, all the spectators in the courtroom clapped their hands. Their execution was held publicly on the following day and became a theater of horror. The 14 Nazi criminals were hanged in front of over 100,000 civilian spectators who came to witness the execution, which took place in the horse racing venue of Minsk, today's Victory Square. Soviet officials brought the 14 men to the gallows on 14 trucks and tied the nooses on as thousands of men, women, and children watched. On the platform of each of the 14 trucks stood one convict. While some of the Nazi criminals who were to be hanged stood proudly, the others wet their trousers. When the trucks moved forward, the condemned Nazis were left to hang, swaying in the air. More than 2 million Belarusians were killed during the Second World War, accounting for approximately 25% of the total population, the highest proportion of any country involved in the war. There were many tears shed for all the victims of Nazi terror.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.